Hey, so I'm going to do a little story time. I'm going to do a few story times. And I talked about these things in my live yesterday that got stopped. But I want to start by telling you just a few stories about when I was growing up in South Central and in Compton. I lived in South Central till I was 9. We moved to Compton, and I stayed there until I was in high school. Somewhere between junior high and high school, my mother got married, and we moved from Compton to right into South Central area. And I still finished school at Compton High, and I went to Cal Poly Pomona for 1 year before I moved to the Midwest. So I remember I was about 14. I was about 14, and we lived on Magnolia Street, and there was kids everywhere. And in the summertime, weekends, kids would be out, dark outside. Parents knew the other kids. And so there was a family that lived like 3 houses down from us. I was about 14 at the time. There was a girl who lived about 3 houses down with her family, and she was about 17. Her name was Nettie. And one night it had to be in the summertime because I wouldn't have been out, 8 or 9 o'clock or something like that, sitting in the car with nobody, because school was the next day. And it was one of those nights where kids were out late, so probably it would have been in the summertime, and kids were out in the streets still doing whatever, playing in the streets in front of their houses. The street lights were on, and we were just sitting in the car talking, me, a 14-year-old girl and a 17-year-old girl in high school. And we were, just sitting there jaw jagging, and she said, look, because I was sitting, seems like for some reason I might have been sitting in the driver's seat, right? Because we just sitting there talking. And I turned around and looked, y'all, this big old dark man in a black leather jacket, looked like he had on a black turtleneck too, or some type of black shirt under. It was all black. He was dark. He was big. He had leaned over into the car window for me. And I'm, all dramatic and 14 years old and not adult and not experienced and none of that stuff. So I'm just clowning. Y'all, this man was after me, wanting me to be his lady, wanting me to be his girl. And I was being a teenager. I don't know you. Just not even understanding the seriousness of the crime he wanted to commit with me, right? And I'm just like, and I was being real sassy, and I was being 14 years old, and I was being real comical. And he was serious about me being his girl. And I was telling him, how old is you anyway? He told me he was about 45, 47, something like that. Wanting me to be his girl. Serious about wanting me to be his girl. And why do I tell you this story? First of all, if I had told my mama, if I had got out the car, I couldn't get out the car because he was all over the door, leaning into the window. But if I had managed to get out of that car and go to my mama and tell her that some 40-something-year-old man was out there asking me to be his girl, my mama would have came out the house with some pum-pum. Okay? So, but I think about this Shannon ain't too sharp stuff, and I think about, it made me think more and more about experiences that I had as a girl growing up in California, growing up in LA and Compton. Y'all, it was common for grown men to approach young girls. I remember it was an old dude. He might have been a pimp, I don't know. But he had a Cadillac, and he was always dressed up, always dressed real nice. And we called him Chat. I don't know what he was, but I never saw him standing around talking to grown people. He was never going into a woman's house to visit a woman, like his girl lady friend or something. But he was always around. When the streets was full of kids outside playing. It was common for grown men to approach young girls. It was common. I don't know what would have happened to me if I had agreed to let this man be my man. I had never seen him before. I'm pretty sure the older girl that I was sitting in the car with, she wasn't surprised. So he knew somebody. So I'm sure she knew him from before, but I had never seen him before. And here he was out here with street full of kids out there playing in the summertime in the evening or whatever, or at least on the weekend. And he's leaning in the car on a 14-year-old girl trying to convince me that he wanted me to be his girl, knowing exactly what that means. So when all this stuff came up with Unc, it just made me say, let me share some of my stories, because I know I'm not the only one. And I know that a lot of girls have had things happen to them by grown men, right? But it just made me think about how growing up in Compton and it was nothing to be heckled by grown men while you walking down the street. This happened when I was about 12 or 13. Back then the kids just walk to the store. Like we called them the liquor store because they were liquor stores, but you could also go in there and get candy, potato chips, pickles, or whatever. And they, back then in the 70s, if you got a popsicle, it was a popsicle. And there used to be a popsicle called the Big Stick. It was huge. It was like about a foot, almost a foot tall. And it was one of those rainbow color, orange and red and yellow, almost kind of like rainbow sherbet. And it was so good. Y'all, I had walked to the store one day, just walk up there, 25 cents. Walk up to the store to get me a Big Stick. It's too hot to wait till you get back home to eat it. So I'm just walking down the street, just tearing that Big Stick up. Now I know you can't do that, right? But at 12 years old, I'm just a 12-year-old girl. Yes, I was 6 feet even at 12 years old. So that made a lot of grown men look at me like I was grown. But if any grown men had looked at my face, they would have seen that I was a child. But evidently, most of them didn't care. None of them cared. And I was standing, I had got to the stoplight. I was, y'all, having relations with that Big Stick was so good. That was the best popsicle ever. And I heard a horn blow, boop, boop. And I was just like, on the popsicle that I had bought for 25 cents in the summertime, right? This grown 30-some-year-old man, it was two of them in the car. I mean, like beard, mustache, grown. And then he gonna say, hey, will you like that popsicle? And I went, because what else is a 12-year-old girl gonna do? And that's what we said back then. Like, it graduated to ew and all this other. It was, and my whole face just went, and they bust out laughing, and I walked on home. But I think I probably was looking over my shoulder to make sure the car didn't turn around. So that's what I grew up in. I grew up, and then think about our parents, our mothers. There was no internet back then. There was no cell phones. There was no texting and emailing. So all of these interactions happened in person. These grown men were in these girls' faces, asking them to do things, asking them to be their girl, asking them to, let me be mine or whatever. I'll take care of you or whatever. So that's just one of my stories. And I'll make another video about the other one, because the other one actually talks about how somebody really had started grooming me. And I didn't know it because I was young. And guess what? I was 18. I was 19. So legal don't mean nothing. 19, 18 is still a child. So I'll see y'all in the next video.